Well, during a lunch meeting today with Senate leadership, the president asked who the Senate members, the GOP, would like to see him nominate to lead the central bank. One report indicated that Stanford economist John Taylor, a so-called hawk, won the informal vote. And as Steve Liesman reports, he is just one of 5 on a short list of candidates.
President Trump has narrowed his choice for the Fed chair down to 5 names. One group of nominees, they'd bring change to the Fed, perhaps dramatic change. The other, more or less, would maintain the status quo. The choice, which is effectively for the most powerful economic position in the world, is seen as one of the most important the president will make, and it could come as soon as or earlier than November 3rd. The leading candidate is believed to be Jerome Powell over here. He's a Republican nominated by President Obama, Federal Reserve governor since 2012. To the president, he's on the board. He was previously a partner at the private equity firm, the Carlyle Group, and favors rolling back some financial regulations, keeping some as well. Powell is seen bridging the gap between a desire for change at the Fed among some Republicans and a desire to maintain the status quo, which Wall Street seems to prefer. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said to favor Powell. Former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, he's seen as the second most likely choice. Hoover Institution fellow, Stanford University. Most importantly, Warsh served during the financial crisis on the Federal Reserve from 2006 to 2011, but he broke with Fed officials when he left in 2011. He thought the Fed had gone too far in keeping rates and policy too low for too long. The question is whether or not Warsh being the Fed chair would mean higher rates. Along the same lines, President Trump is also considering Stanford economics professor John Taylor, really seen as a leading light in monetary policy. He has strongly advocated for the Fed to follow rules for setting Fed policy. Fed officials have opposed this, saying it takes away discretion during critical times, for example, like financial crisis. Meanwhile, the president has said he likes and respects the current Fed chair, Janet Yellen, and she remains among the top 5, but her candidacy seen as a long shot, as most believe the president wants his own person in the job. The president could face opposition, for example, from Republicans who've been critical of the Fed. Still, Yellen has more experience at the Fed, as you can see here, than all of the other candidates combined. Gary Cohn, the director of the National Economic Council, a top economic advisor to the president, was once a leading candidate, but his odds fell almost to nothing after he criticized the president's response to the violence surrounding the Charlottesville protests. The predicted futures market gives him less than a 2% chance for being named Fed chair. Now, while those markets, they rate the probabilities, they try to price them in, White House insiders say the only list that matters is in the president's own mind, and no one has seen that list yet. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Steve Liesman.